What we're going to talk about for these next few hours, for this hour, is basically 4 things. First of all, I'm going to ask you the question, why corporate mindfulness? And of course, you cannot know because this is not your business. So basically, I'm going to answer it myself, but with your help, hopefully. From there, we will look at what is it actually, and we'll do a short little exercise, a short little mindfulness training. So when you leave this room, you'll actually try it, what this mindfulness training is. After that, we'll just look briefly at what do the scientists say that you can actually get out of it when you engage in a training like this. And at the end, we will go back to what we'll actually end with or start with, which is multitasking. And I will give you 2 rules, which is, according to the scientists and according to what we see in companies around the world, it's a very powerful alternative to multitasking, because that's probably not the best way of working, but we'll get there. Before that, maybe I should just say briefly about my own background. I started out with mindfulness 20 years ago and have been practicing it for myself, with my kids, with my family, but also teaching this around the world for the last 15 years. And besides from that, I've been doing research in mindfulness, but also in organizational development and working in the corporate world. And it was when I was working in the corporate world that I realized that something is missing there. Because the corporate world or the working life in general is sometimes a bit of a battlefield. I don't know if you know the feeling of busyness. Someone can relate to that? Yeah, great. So over the years, we've been working in many companies, many organizations all over the world, mainly in Australia, Asia, and Europe. And we have come up with this term that quite clearly describes what is modern working life like now. And I would like to check if it's the same in SBS. So I'm going to put up 4 words here, the PADI words, and I will ask you to raise your hands if you can recognize them from your own working life. Are you okay for that? Yep. So first of all, does any of you feel that you're under pressure when you're at work? If you do so, please put up your hands. That was almost all of you, I guess. How many of you feel like you're always on? How many of you feel like you're living in an environment, a work environment that is very distracted? Emails, phones, office communicator, and so on. Yeah, good one. And lastly, information overloaded. Lots of... Okay, this is a media. Yeah, right. Good. So this is 4 things that we see in any organization in any part of the world nowadays. And I'm happy to see that you're part of that as well. Or that I'm not really happy for you, but maybe there's something I can help you with. At least that's what I'm going to try. So I'm going to ask you now, you're living in this PADI reality. So for the future, for SBS and for yourself to be successful in this work, what mental qualities do you need to be successful? And I'm asking you to turn to your neighbor just for 1 minute and discuss this. What kind of mental qualities do you need to be successful, to be happy, to be performing in this busy PADI life? So 1 minute, please. All right, thank you very much. So I would like to get a little bit feedback, and for that we need a few microphones. So who could just mention 1 or 2 qualities that you need to be successful in the PADI reality? Please put up your hand.
We decided that you need to be relaxed and you also need to care. So if you're stressed, then, if you're stressed and you don't care, then it's going to be a lot harder than if you're relaxed and you do.
Very good. So relaxed and care. Good. Thank you very much. Yes, please.
We decided that we thought you needed to be resilient.
Yeah.
To be able to bounce back.
Yeah.
And have mental stability.
Mental stability and yes, resilience. Sounds like good ones. Thank you very much.
You've got to be able to shut out the noise and be able to focus at some stage so that all of us can be focused, because we were just saying that if we're all running around like headless chooks, distracted all the time, are we really successfully forging ahead as an organisation? So that ability to focus.
Yes, thank you very much. So I could ask all of you and you would all come up with others or maybe similar, but definitely things like focus, the ability to shut out all the clutter, the ability to be resilient and go through all of this busyness that you are without taking it inside, and the ability to care and be relaxed, yes, definitely. So mindfulness, I would claim, will give you most of these in a quite specific way. And I would say there's one mental quality that underlies the ability of having all these qualities, which is mindfulness. And I'll tell a little story that will show how this works. This is a story about Michael, and Michael was a senior manager in an organization in Denmark. And he came to me some years ago and he said, my life is so tough. I'm very, very busy with 200 emails a day, so and so many meetings, so many phone calls and text messages and so on. And when I come home, there's the dog and there's the kids and there's, you know the game, right? So he was very, very busy. And he wanted to have more resilience, he wanted to have more focus, he wanted to be less stressed. And he said, can you help me? And I said, well, I can do my best. So over the course of 4 months, we went through some sessions, some weekly sessions of an hour, where I taught him the practice that I'm going to talk to you about today. And he had to sit down 10 minutes every day and do the exact training that you're going to do today. And after 4 months, he had spent quite a lot of time on this. And I asked him, so Michael, what did you get out of this? And he looked at me and he said, I got 1 second. And I thought, damn, I blew it. Something's really wrong here. He spent so much time, he just got 1 second. But his explanation made so much sense. Because he said, before, when he got an email or someone was saying something to him, when something happened to him, he would just react on autopilot. And now he got this 1 second of freedom in his mind, so that when an email came in, or when someone said something to him, he would have this freedom to think about the appropriate response, just 1 second, and then respond in the most constructive way. So that was what mindfulness gave him, 1 second. So he had this term of coming 1 second ahead. That's really what mindfulness is. And he said when he got that, wow, suddenly he was focused because he was not in reactivity. Suddenly he was more resilient because he didn't take things in. Suddenly he didn't say caring, but he would say same things like that. He had the ability to develop all the qualities that he needed because he had 1 second of freedom in his mind to choose the direction of how he was living, how he was thinking, how he was acting. Does that make sense? Getting it? Okay. So Michael is not the only one who is getting this point, and there's actually a growing number of large organizations around the world that are using these kind of trainings for their employees and leaders. We work with them and we ask them, so why do you do it? And they say it's because work life has changed radically over the last decades. So a few decades ago, work life looked a little bit like this. You had something that you had to attend to, whether it was a typewriter or a patient or a client or dictaphone, whatever it was, that's what you were doing. You could focus on one stream of information at the time, whereas today, can you recognize it a little bit? Maybe you don't have 6 screens, well, maybe some of you do, but there's so much information coming to us all the time, so many distractions. We're bombarded, constantly bombarded. How many of you feel like you're still in this paradigm? No one. Over here? Yeah, okay. So that's really the reality of work life today. And what happens when we are confronted with this kind of lots of information all the time is that the brain takes it in, and the brain does one thing that is not so useful. It tries to solve it all at the same time. There's a good word for this: multitasking. Trying to do more things at the same time, multitasking. So I'm going to talk a little bit about multitasking and then make the link to mindfulness. But first I want you to do a little test, if you're with me on doing a little test on multitasking. So I'm asking you to take a piece of paper. You all have a little postcard, and you can use that one, and a pen. So when you're ready, what I'm asking you to do is, on this piece of paper, draw 4 horizontal lines, like you see up here now. Ready? So what I'm asking you to do, while I will be timing you, is on the first line, and not yet, you'll be writing, I'm a great multitasker. As soon as you've done that, you'll continue to write 1, 2, 3, up until 20, not yet. Yeah, I saw you were about to do it. And you were not the only one. So this is the task. While you're doing that, I'll be timing you. So I'll say when 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and so on has passed on. When you're finished, please write out here approximately how long time it took you. Are you ready for it? So we will begin now. 5 seconds. Just take your time. Don't get stressed. Your boss is watching you, but no problem. 10 seconds. 15 seconds. 20 seconds. Most of you are done. 25. And 30. You did well. Congratulations, you passed the test. So we'll move directly on to the next one, which looks like this. You'll be writing exactly the same thing, but in a different way. 1, or I, 1, A, 2, M, 3. So what I'm asking you to do now is to multitask. Are you ready for that? And we will be starting now. 5 seconds. And this time it will take a little longer, so please hurry up. A little bit faster, please. Don't make mistakes. No mistakes, please, but hurry up. 15 seconds. Quite a few of you were done by now before. What's happening to you guys? 20 seconds. Come on. 25. I think you were all done by now. 30 seconds. I didn't even count anymore. 35. Still writing, still writing. 40. We've got 15 more minutes. 45. And 50. If you're not done by now, just forget about it. Then I will ask you a few simple questions. How many of you took approximately twice as long down here as up there? About everyone. Thank you very much. How many of you made mistakes or were about to make mistakes up here? One honest person. Thank you very much. 2, great. How many of you made mistakes or were about to make mistakes down here? Most of you. Wonderful. Not wonderful, but thank you. Last question. How many of you found that number 2 was just a little bit more stressful than number 1? Thank you very much. So we learned 3 basic things about multitasking right now. First of all, it takes longer time. Secondly, we make more mistakes. And thirdly, it's a little bit more stressful. So that's just a little experiment and our own experience of it. There's been done a lot of research on this, and especially from Stanford University, they've done a lot of research. And the results are not very positive. When you go out and multitask and make that your way of working, you become less efficient, you have less overview, less focused. It'll drain your energy because you're shifting back and forward all the time. The quality is reduced, it stresses you, and then the bottom line is it's creating habits. So that means if you allow yourself to multitask all the time, you'll be a really great multitasker, which means you'll be less efficient, have less overview, and so on, and that will become your habitual way of working. That doesn't sound great, does it? Are there any great multitaskers in the room? Thank you. Any proud multitaskers in the room? Not anymore. All right. So these are some of the results of multitasking. There is one result of multitasking that is more fundamental and more, I think, devastating, really problematic. And this has been researched in the States. In some 5 minutes, we'll do a little test here and see if it's the same results in Australia. But this research has been published in Harvard Business Review some time ago. A psychiatrist has been looking at people in organizations like SBS for the last 20 years. And he's been looking at their ability to pay attention, to be focused, to be present with their tasks, whether it's an email or it's a meeting or whether it's at home with their kids. So just the ability of paying attention. And what he has seen is that over the last 20 years, the ability has just dropped radically. Simply people are losing their ability to pay attention. He's concluding modern office life and an increasingly common condition called attention deficit trait are turning steady executives into frenzied underachievers. Attention deficit trait is a term for it. We're simply losing the ability to pay attention. What do you think this looks like in Australia? Maybe the same. Let's have a look. Because what I'm asking you to do now is to test out how this works for yourself. How well can you manage your own attention? Your boss won't know the results, so you can be very easy with this exercise. It's an exercise that'll take you 45 seconds. Are you willing to join? You may not like the results. You can still leave the room. Okay. So what I'm asking you to do for the next 45 seconds is just to close your eyes. And then attend fully to the experience of your breath. So just focus single-pointed on the experience of breathing in and out. If any thought comes in, do not think it. If you hear any sound, don't listen to it. Just full attention on the breath. Okay, thank you very much. You can leave the breath. Keep on breathing, but you can leave the attention on the breath. And then with a raise of hands, how many of you had a thought, just a very honest raise of hand, how many of you had a thought during these 45 seconds? That was almost all of you. Thank you very much. Could someone please tell what this thought was about? If we have a microphone, what kind of thought came into your mind? Was that a hand up there? Yeah.
My thought was, why can't I stop multitasking?
Why? Great.
Why can't I stop?
Okay. Thank you very much. So my instructions was very clear, right? Just don't think, and then still can't stop it. Yeah. Okay. Someone else?
I've got a meeting to arrange for next Wednesday.
Yeah. So what day do we have today? It's Thursday, right? Yeah. So thinking about the future. One more?
I was thinking about how can I listen to your instructions and not hear any sound other than my own breath.
Very good. So this inner commentator always thinking whatever it is thinking. So the mind is actually very simple. It has some very basic tendencies that we are all replicating. We have thoughts and we have emotions, and they are often or actually almost associated all the time either to the past or to the future. So that's more or less what the mind is like. And to illustrate this in a cartoon, here comes John, and John is sitting Monday morning. Monday morning he has a very important email to write, but John is busy with something else in his mind, which is golf. What else? Well, had he been Australian, it would have been, what, rugby or whatever. Now it gets more juicy. Later on in the day, John finally gets to play his golf. This is a cartoon that we can easily use in Denmark. I know it's sometimes problematic in Australia, and this is even on TV, but I dare to try.
Yes, okay.
Yes. Great. We don't know if it's his wife, but maybe finally in the evening he gets home to the wife or whoever it is, thinking back at work. And it's nice for you women, you can laugh at a man, right? But do you recognize this from yourself? Yeah? So a psychiatrist would say, if you have this kind of mind, which about 99.9% of all modern people have, you're suffering from a light degree of ADHD. And it's just very normal, so don't worry about it. So basically, our mind is wandering in the past and the future, and not often very present. How much of the time do you actually think that we in general are paying attention to what we're doing? And how much of the time is the mind wandering? So how much, just to estimate, how much do you think your mind is wandering off in daydreaming and everything that has not to do with what you're doing now? Any good guesses? 95% of the time? That's a very pessimistic guess, but thank you. Sorry? 60-40. 60 what? Wandering. 60 wandering, wow, yeah. Is this saying something about yourself or someone else? Okay, but there's been done some research on this, published in Science recently, and it's actually stating that it's 46.9% of our time. It's almost half of our waking hours that we're wandering off, not paying attention to what we're doing. Just imagine if you would win some of this attention back, how much time you would have. I mean, if you get this one down to, let's say, 30%, you would suddenly have 10% more or even more attention for the work that you have to do. Meaning you would have space in your mind to develop care and relaxation and focus and resilience, all those kind of things. So there's a huge potential to be developed here if we actually learn to pay more attention. And that's really what mindfulness is about. And now we're a little bit almost at the half of the talk, and I've just been going down and down this deep dark hole, how bad things are. So I think it's time to turn it around and look at the positive side. Are you in for that? So the next part is, what is corporate mindfulness? What is this whole thing about mindfulness? And there is hope. So even though we are wandering off half of our waking hours, and it seems like we're just multitasking and just ruining our lives and our performance, there's good news coming from other parts of science, from neuroscience. What we see here is an animation of your brain from the inside. What we have here are lots of neurons. We have about 100 billion neurons, these balls here, and they're connected by synapses, these bridges that go between them. They all have 5,000 synapses, so it's quite an advanced network out there. If sometimes you feel confused, that's the reason. Every time we do something, every time we think something or hear something, experience something, there are connections made between the neurons. We're creating synapses. So every time you're thinking about something, there are new connections made, and when you think about it again, the connection is already there, so the information can more easily flow through. So the bottom line of this is basically we are changing, we're reshaping our brain all the time according to how we're using it. It's called neuroplasticity, and it's really a cool finding because it's basically saying, you know, guys, you're free, you can change. That's great news, isn't it? We can actually change. So we may be multitasking, we may be daydreaming and wandering off. We may not have enough care, we may not be focused enough, but these are all things in the brain, and it's something that we can train. And that's really what mindfulness is about. It's like going to the gym, you know, you go and you lift weights, and every time you lift the weight, you know that you get a little bit stronger. In mindfulness, we're doing exactly the same thing. The only difference is it's the mind we're training, and it's our ability to pay attention, whether it's to an email or it's a conversation, or whether it's to our children when we're reading the good night story. That's really what mindfulness is about. Or with a simple definition, it's basically about learning to manage our attention. So that was the burning platform, and this is the definition of mindfulness. Are you interested in trying it? Mm-hmm. Yeah? Good. I guess that's why you came. So it's a very old tradition. It's about 2,500 years old, and there's been done a lot of research on it. I'll show you a little bit of it. But just to condense it, and because we're working only with organizations like your own and busyness, so you don't have like 10 weeks to read all the books about it, we've condensed it into this simple ABCD method. The A standing for anatomy, basically paying attention to the body, that you're sitting in a good way. I'll guide you through that. The B for the breathing, we need an anchor to train the attention on, something that we're constantly coming back to. Just like in the gym, you have a weight that you're lifting. So the breath is the weight that we're lifting in mindfulness training. The C standing for counting, so every time we're breathing, we'll be counting our breath. So we count in, and we breathe in, and we breathe out. Count 1, in, out 2, in, out 3. Count up to 10 and down to 1 again. And the C, or the D, stands for distractions. And those are all the things that you just experienced. All the thoughts in the mind, all the sounds, thank you. We planned this, right? Yeah. So distractions is anything that takes you away from the breath. And they are our helpers, not our enemies, because it's distractions that tells us, wow, you're off track, come back to the breath. And that's when you get to lift the mental weight and train the attention. So what I'll do is I'll sit down, and then we'll do just a short 3 minutes mindfulness training together. Does that sound okay? So just stay seated as you're sitting. Put your feet on the ground so that you have a bit of balance. And try and maintain a straight back. Allow your eyes to be closed, and you can breathe through your nose. And take a deep in-breath, and with the out-breath, try and release any tension you may experience in your neck or your shoulders, your arms. And now, turn your full attention to the breath. specifically at the abdomen. So just notice how the abdomen is rising as you're breathing in and is falling as you're breathing out. You don't need to change it. You don't need to make it deep or long. Just breathe as you're breathing and observe this neutrally. And while you're doing this, count at each out-breath. 1 every time. Go up to 10, backwards down to 1. And the last instruction, the D for distractions, our helpers, our friends. Every time that you find you're not paying attention to the breath, every time you find yourself thinking, just acknowledge it with a bit of gratitude. Thank you very much. And return your full attention to the breath again. And we'll sit like this in silence for a few minutes. And so now in your own pace, you can let go of the attention of the breath and return your attention to this room. So how did that go?
I think the thing that you said about not getting annoyed with the distractions, because then you feel like you failed. So it's nice to go, oh yeah, they're just there, and back to where you started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have many distractions during these minutes?
Yeah, I'm really cold. And that was the main one.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And it came back more times and you went back to the breath again?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And I just thought, oh, well, I'm just cold. It's just there.
Yeah.
Go back to the breath.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Now I'm
that all
freezing. Now I'm even more cold. Now I'm dropping off
Yeah.
the chair because I'm... Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Good. Someone else? How did it go?
I just felt that the more you counted
Yeah.
the distractions, you just got more and more relaxed.
Yeah.
It was easier to count, and it was really relaxing.
Yeah. Good. For many people, it has this effect that as you do this in the beginning, there's many thoughts, but after a while, it kind of calms down. It's a little bit like if you take a glass of water with a lid on it and you shake it and there's some sand in there. In the beginning, it's very, very dusty. You can't see through it. After a while, all the sand goes down and it's clear. And that happens during mindfulness training. If you sit like this for 10 minutes, many people experience this thing that things calm down. There's more clarity, more relaxation, more focus. Yeah. So that's probably part of what you experience now. Good. Thank you very much. Yeah. Did anyone have really a lot of thoughts? Yeah.
No, I just kept on, couldn't. It took me right to the end. I had to do it twice. I had to go up 1 to 10, down, back up again, just to calm down. It was too many going on at once. Yeah.
Just an estimate. How many times did you manage to come back to the breath?
Oh, I had to go back about 6 or 7 times. Yeah.
6 or 7 times.
Yeah.
All right. So you who had to go back and forward 6 or 7 times, it's I guess it's the same for many of you. You basically lifted the mental weight 6 or 7 times. So you wandered off and you brought it back again. Remember neuroplasticity? What you did right now, you were creating neural connections in your brain, allowing you to be more, focused on what you wanted. Yeah. Meaning, when you get up off that chair and go to your office, wherever you sit, those neural networks, they will not stay on that chair. They will stay in your brain. So basically, when you come back to your computer or whatever you do, you will have just a slight better ability to actually pay attention to what you're doing, because you've been doing this training just for a few minutes. Now, of course, it takes a bit more than 3 minutes to really get results out of this, but that is the effect, or that is the principle we're training here. So well done. Was anyone in here able to really stay with the breath for quite some time?
Yeah, I found it very good, very easy to do. It's a system similar to what I use going to sleep each night.
Yeah.
So I usually have very short sleep.
Yeah.
So I have to set myself into a deep sleep.
Yeah.
And that's the way I do it. So in the breathing there, I only got down or up to 10 and down to 5 in that whole period. So it was just very slow, very concentrated.
Yeah, great.
So.
So you had benefit because you actually did a lot of weightlifting. You had benefit because what you actually did there, you were training your neural networks to really pay attention. So you had the same benefit, just in a different way.
Yep.
So this is not about learning to just be focused all the time, but it's just as much about training, because then you have the benefit when you're leaving the training. Yes, please, you'll get a microphone.
Just because I found that I ditched the counting.
Yes.
I found it far more easy to just
Yeah.
focus on the breathing without trying to count at the
Yes,
same time.
absolutely.
So does that matter?
It doesn't matter. For about 85%, counting is a very useful tool to keep on track with the breath. But for some 15, maybe 20%, it's better to leave the counting because it becomes a distraction.
Yeah,
So
that's
we're all
what I found.
different,
The
so-
counting distracted me from the breath
yeah.
rather than helping
The
me.
counting is the only letter you can take out of this equation. The rest has to be in there, but that's true. Thank you. Yeah. So, yes, please.
I don't know much. In fact, I don't know anything about meditation. But in my mind, I kept wondering, is this what meditation is? And I couldn't get rid of that question in my head because I wanted to be able to remember to ask you.
Thank you very much. And it's a very relevant question. Is this meditation? Yes, this is a kind of meditation, but just like there are many TV stations in Australia, SBS is one particular one, right? It's probably the best one, isn't it? Okay, so I would say there are many sorts of meditation, thousands of ways of meditating. Mindfulness is just one of them. And it has, from a scientific point of view, proven to have so many benefits, and that's why it's just exploding all over the world right now. Yeah, so it is a kind of meditation, but a kind of. Yeah, thank you. All right. So just to close down the principle of this training, basically we're training two things here. Going back to this busy work life. First challenge there is it's difficult to stay focused. As we could see from the Harvard Business Review, we're simply losing the ability to really pay attention. Another big problem nowadays is we're distracted all the time and our mind wanders off to those distractions, taking us away from our focus, right? So what we are training here are two basic principles. First one being the ability really to zoom in and focus on what we choose, develop those neural networks that allows us to pay full attention to an email or a meeting or our children, whatever. And the other one is this panoramic awareness that allows us to monitor, hey, what's going on in the mind right now? Oh, so in the training, I'm actually noticing I wandered off. I'm not with the breath anymore. My focus just wandered off. And the panoramic awareness tells the focus, come back to the breath. So these are the two main things that we're training here. The ability to have a sharp focus and a panoramic awareness. And that's really what we're needing in a busy work life because we're bombarded constantly and lacking the ability to stay focused. These two principles I'll come back to at the very end, giving these two rules of working with mindfulness, which is the opposite of multitasking. So this was the first takeaway from today, the ABCD, and the second one will be those two rules. But before I give you those, I'll just share a little bit about what the scientists are saying. So now you try just 3 minutes and you have a little taste of what it is. And you think, oh, maybe that's nice, but what can it actually provide me? And I'll show you now. According to scientists, more than 3 minutes a day, for sure. This was done on people who had done this for a number of years, longer time every day. But they looked at the cortex of the brain, this big part up here. That's the part of the brain that is used for rational thinking, problem solving, logical thinking, and so on. You need that big time when you're at work. It's basically made up of gray matter. And before I show the first graph, I need to check, are there anyone below age of 22? No? Okay. Bad news is you have all peaked. So what we see here is when we are 22, we're peaking in terms of the density of gray matter in our cortex. And the older we get, it's just a sliding scale. Great, isn't it? However, this is not a nature-given law, but we can actually change this. As you can see, people who were doing mindfulness training more extensively, they actually developed more and more gray cells in the cortex. They can measure this just behind our forehead. The cortex is getting thicker and thicker and thicker, whereas for most people it's just getting thinner and thinner and thinner. So that's one of the effects of mindfulness. I promise you, you won't get, these kind of results with just 3 minutes a day, but it's that direction that it's taking. Secondly, they looked at our ability to pay attention. As you can see, from around 22, it's just going down. But for those people who were doing mindfulness, it was actually going up. And the reaction time is going up. That's not a good thing. That means we're getting slower. And for mindfulness, again, it's going down. So it has a huge impact on our brain, just directly on the way our brain is functioning. Also, it has a good impact on our memory. This was just 4 days doing 20 minutes a day, so actually quite brief. They did a memory test before and they did a memory test after, and as you can see, the result speaks for itself. It reduces stress significantly. This was specific research done on one of our programs. So they did 8 weeks where they were training around 50 minutes a week. So that's every weekday they were just doing 10 minutes. And as you can see, after 8 weeks, their stress level had dropped with about 25%. So it's not like we need to do this for hours and hours and hours and for years, but there's a quite fast effect of it. It's changing your mood. When scientists have to look at how happy we are, they look at depression and then they look at if there's a negative score. I don't know what that says about scientists, but anyway, you can see the result. Again, this was 3 days, just 20 minutes a day. And it's reducing cellular aging. This is my grandmother, and as you can see, we are getting more of what is called telomerase activity in the cells of the body. Our cells in the body are basically just deteriorating every moment we are living. But as you can see with people doing mindfulness, there's stronger telomerase activity keeping the cells more rejuvenated. So there are many of these effects, also like sleeping. We get higher sleep quality when we do mindfulness training, which allows us to sleep just 10 minutes shorter, which allows us actually to do the training. It's just a little tip. Get up 10 minutes earlier than you normally do. And then there's been done a lot of research in what does this do to organizational performance and well-being. And most of this has been done, again, on our program, where you can see quality of life is going up, job performance going up, problem solving going up, job satisfaction, work-life balance, focus, concentration, and so on. And going down is like emotional exhaustion, which is the core component of burnout and stress. Cognitive rigidity is the inability to think out of the box, but always just stay in the same tracks. Intention to leave. Multitasking is going down, which is a good thing. So there are actually a lot of benefits from this very, very simple, basic training of mindfulness. Any questions to all of this? I just flipped through it quite fast. Yes, please.
I was just wondering, when do you recommend is a good time to do this sort of thing? Like if you're really stressed and busy and distracted at work, and then you go home and you're fine, if you go and do it at home, is that kind of irrelevant, or is it something that you should be doing through the day when you're at work and you're stressed?
It's a very good question, and you're right in both things. It's good to do at home because there you're more relaxed and it's easier to do the training. At work, you need it more, so that's the reason why it's good to do it there. In general, I would advise, at least in the beginning, do it at home, where there's more peace and tranquility. And do it in the morning. That works well for many people because you set a strong intention for the day, really to pay attention. Otherwise, you do it in the evening if you're not really an early riser. Yeah. In the programs we're doing in companies, people do it together in the workplace, in a meeting room for 10 minutes a day. And that works very well because it becomes a collective, a social thing. Yeah. But if you're just an individual, it's often easier to do at home. But you can definitely do it at the work. Yeah. Find out what works well for you. Yeah. Yes, a question?
Can you achieve mindfulness while you're doing something else? Say like painting or Sudoku or something like
that? Yes and no. Definitely you develop some kind of focus if you do Sudoku, if you do it focused anyway. And when you go running or you're painting, there are also some of the same things happening. But it's not the same intentional training. Like when you lift a weight, it's really a focus on that. There's a stronger impact. So I would say you can, but it's definitely not the same thing. It's a very specific skill. And the training program we're doing is 4 months because there's a lot of small details that you need to get in place, some qualities and attitudes that you're developing. So you can get some of it, but not quite. Yeah, thank you.
Can I ask you about just the nature of some people's jobs? And I'm thinking of my colleagues in news, actually,
Yes.
more than my own area, where the very nature of what they do is interrupted all the time by news.
Yes.
You know, that's the nature of their work.
Yeah.
So the idea of being able to focus on one thing and block out everything else when a story is breaking or there's an urgency about what has to be done.
Yes.
How do you apply this to a situation like working in a newsroom?
Yes, very good question. And we're actually getting to that right now. So thank you very much for asking that. Because you're very right. Any organization, especially a news organization like this, you need to be constantly aware of what's going on around you, right? So if you're just zooming in and doing your little thing, the organization will fall apart, or if everyone is doing that. Yeah. So we're getting to that right now, which is the last thing of today, multitasking and the 2 rules of mindful action. So, yes?
I was just wondering, what's the point of concentrating on breathing?
Yeah.
Why not a music or something else?
Yes, good question. So in theory, you could focus on anything you like. The breathing is a good one because you always have it with you, so you can actually do this training in the bus, in the train, in the queue, in the supermarket. You can do it everywhere. That's one very pragmatic thing. But also there is a lot of mind-body connection when you focus on the breath. So there's actually a lot of physical healing going on, which would be different if you choose another object. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Right. So let's try and apply this principle of focusing, really having a sharp focus, and the panoramic awareness. Those are the 2 qualities we're training in mindfulness. How does that apply to when we are out and having to juggle all these many priorities and tasks and news constantly? How do we do that? How do we bring in mindfulness in action in what we're doing? Rule number 1 is very simple. It's basically focus on what you choose. So in the mindfulness training, it's very simple. You just focus on the breath. Any distraction, you just ditch it. You don't engage with it, but you just focus on the breath. And it's difficult, right? Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when you're out there sitting with your email and there are tons of information going on around you, it's even more difficult. So that is actually not a very easy rule to follow. But the more you follow it and you keep it in mind, the more you actually focus on what you're choosing, the stronger your networks will become and the easier it will be. So you can actually train this in daily business. It's challenging for sure, but it's possible. So that's rule number 1. It looks like this. You're sitting on Monday morning, you're writing this very, very important email. And you're writing, and suddenly your neighbors, 2 people, they start some juicy gossip. And what your mind is naturally doing is wandering over there, the wandering mind again. So this rule is saying focus on what you choose. So what you do is you just say to yourself, no way, I keep my attention right here. And you write that email rather than listening to the gossip. And then another distraction comes up, a thought. And most of our distractions is not coming from out there. Trust me, it's not your work that's the problem. It's also your own mind. So a thought about a shopping list or something you have to do later on, or the meeting on Wednesday, whatever it is, it's not related to the email. So your mind is going to that thought. And the rule is saying, no, focus on what you choose. So you just say, no, thank you, I'll do that on Wednesday, and now I focus on this email. So that's basically rule number 1, right? You're just ditching all the distractions. At some point, still focusing on the email, your boss comes in the door and she's totally red in her face and she shouts at you and she says, there's breaking news and you really need to follow this and blah, blah, blah. But just remember what I said, right? You need to be effective. So you just focus on what you choose and just ignore, right? You getting it? And what is happening is that on Tuesday morning, you'll be fired. So rule number 1 is great for about 95% of the distractions we have, whether they're from the outside or the inside. But there are these incidents like angry bosses and so on that really needs attention. And that's where we need the panoramic awareness, not just the single-pointed, focused, sharp focus, but the more panoramic one, which is telling us, hey, what's going on around us? So that's rule number 2. Choose your distractions mindfully. So normally we're sitting there doing the email and we're not choosing that distraction with the gossip. We just go there. It's just happening on autopilot. And the music and the thoughts, we're just going everywhere. We're wandering. So this one is saying, choose them mindfully. Meaning we're sitting there writing and we are aware, we have the panoramic awareness telling us, the focus is going in the wrong direction, I'll just bring it back again. And the focus is going in the wrong direction, I'll just bring it back again. And then the boss comes in the door, she's red in her face, and we notice, there's a distraction. It's great to call your boss a distraction, right? There's a distraction. What I do now is I give her attention, but don't do like this, yes, what can I do? You know that one? Multitasking, doing two things at the same time, and there's no communication, there's lots of mistakes, nothing is good about that, and you get very stressed about it as well. So what you do is you totally let go of that email, and you focus 100% on that new person. And she becomes rule number 1, focus on what you choose. You finish that, you go back to your email. Yeah. That sounds very easy, doesn't it? Just 2 rules, just apply them. But it does require quite a lot of, or not quite, but 10 minutes at least of training every day. These 10 minutes sitting down, training ABCD, and as well trying to apply these rules in everything that you're doing. So it's not just something we do when we're writing emails, but it's also in the meetings, in the goal setting, and everything that we're doing at work. No matter what you're doing, apply these 2 rules. When you're at home and you're doing the dinner, when you're eating the dinner, whatever you're doing, apply these 2 rules. Really become aware, being present right now. That's really what mindfulness is about. Paying attention right now, being present, coming back to life, not wasting 46.9%. Yeah. Right. So those were the words from me for today. So I'll just end by saying thank you. It was a big pleasure meeting all of you, and thank you very much.